Welcome, everybody, to the Life Warrior Podcast, a podcast that we've been talking about for just a little bit now. And the more we've gotten into it especially in our TikTok lives and stuff, the more I realize that this topic is, man, it's a serious topic, and it's being experienced a lot more than I ever understood. And so we were just discussing this, how on the lives, man, every time we start talking about the podcast, it's just one after the other. My husband did this, and that one night it was my husband almost choked me to death. It was like attempted to kill me. My husband just got 65 years in prison for that. I mean, and I was like, my gosh, man, it's insane how many people it's happened to. So I think this is a perfect topic to start with. And so we got together, y'all, and had a little bit of discussion. I personally, like I said, have not dealt with domestic violence because like I said, I don't know how it works. I know, Amanda, you said that, I think it was you who told me the stats have actually changed. There's percentage of men now being abused, like in a domestic situation, is higher now.
Yes, it's not just women.
Yeah, that blew me away.
You have a lot more in today's time that the women are abusing the men. So in this, it's not just so everybody's aware, it's not just for the women who are being abused. It's for the men and women, both, who are in the abusive situations. But statistics are right now are very high that there are more men being abused than women.
Yeah,
But that on that where those statistics come from. I mean, it's kind of a straight line thing. I mean, it might be 3 women today, 10 men tomorrow.
right?
Or vice versa.
Yeah, so these are things that I really have racked my brain with all of this, and I've tried to understand. And this is partly for me, like doing this podcast on this, and I don't know if I'll get the answers right, because from a man's perspective, I don't get it. It baffles me how you could put yourself as a man in that position and actually do it. Like, actually, that blows me away. And I think I told a story the other night. My sister experienced it when I was a kid. And, my dad, being my dad, handled the business. It was, okay, that's how it's going to be. Well, I'm going to go handle you, and you're going to come home with us. It's, and so, I don't, like I said, I hope to learn something here. I don't know if I will, because I don't know if it's possible to put myself ever in that mindset. But you two have experienced it. And what's funny is, y'all, Amanda's experience with that is completely different than Deb's, and we're talking about today. The first one is having the courage to leave. That is the very first one that we're doing here. And Amanda faced it for 5 years.
For 5 years.
Went through that period for 5 years of absolute hell and torment, and it almost cost her life. And I think Deb's experience was much shorter than that, and she kicked him to the curb really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, she kicked the curb really fast. And so that's what this first one is about, y'all. Having the courage to leave. We came up with a list of things, and so Amanda is the professional here, and so I'm gonna let her lead this thing off, and we'll get into it. So, Amanda, you're up.
So the very first one to start it off with is like we were saying, getting out, having the courage to leave and get out. And most people who are in this world, maybe some watching this podcast, that are going to say, "Oh, that's simple," but it's not.
Yeah.
A little part on me, real quick. I went through 5 years of it. The very first part of that was, "Oh, I'll never do it again." Courts involved, plea deal cases of, oh, I made this mistake. And as women, we say, okay, I love this person, so, one time deal, no big deal. And that one time no big deal turns into bigger and bigger and bigger deals. So a lot of people, who have lived it understand the fears of getting out and what it becomes, what we become as a person. And we become a person who is very, we went into those relationships thinking that, our lives were great. We had the self-confidence, we had everything we thought, we needed, until all of that is burnt. All of those, it's the I'm sorry's, it's the it'll never happen again, but it's the continuation of, you get yourself put down so much that, there's even people in this world today who believe I deserved it. You've got people who will say, I deserved what happened to me, because you're put in that position of this person who makes you feel the utmost best person in the world every day after.
Did you have that feeling? Did you ever, was that your thought process?
I did. So the very first time that it happened to me, I ended up calling the police. Now, here in Kentucky where I live, if you have any kind of marks on you in a domestic violence situation, the state is going to press the charges. So you do not have to press those charges. So when the police showed up in my case, I'm like, no, I don't want to press charges. Because the whole time he knew they were coming, and it was the I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this. Don't make me go to jail. It'll never happen again. And, so he did go to jail overnight. He actually had to stay with his dad for a few days because he wasn't allowed back in the house. But, as time went on, then it was great for a couple weeks because that was the first go round.
Yeah.
So then it was great for a couple weeks. And then it got worse and worse and worse. But every time after, it was, I was drinking, or I just had a really bad day. I didn't mean it. So there was always something. And it was, I'll buy you the world. I'll take you shopping the next day. Or, so there's so many guilt trips.
Right. So in that process with you, you called the police the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it continued. What was it that made you not go, okay, I called them the very first time. Why, what was it that made you hang on and not continue that process?
Fear. Because as it continues to happen, you'll, just like I did, it was like, don't tell your parent, you can't tell your mom and dad. You can't tell anybody that this is going on, or this happened to you, or it's worse, or I'm going to make it worse. So it's fear. There is so much fear that is brought into continuous abuse. Because when it does continue, it wasn't, the abuse I went through to start out with, it wasn't like just, the mind games or the mental abuse. It was the physical abuse from the day it started.
Yeah.
And, in the summertime, I would wear sweatshirts. What parent doesn't know when you see your child, and I'm still of it. I mean, I had three kids, but when you go visit your mom and dad and you're wearing a turtleneck that's in the middle of the summertime, oh, I'm just cold.
Right.
So, in my situation, my parents knew, but I even told them, I'll get out. It's not going to be so bad. So when you're afraid of the situation and the abuse that's going on, you're going to try everything in your power to talk anybody out of helping you, because in your mind, because they have given you the mindset that if you tell anybody or you get out, it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
So that makes it very hard to just say, screw this, I'm gone.
Right.
And for me it was, I was telling Deb, I was held up by my throat with my feet off the ground in the laundry room floor. I was thrown against walls. I had broken ribs. I was like the big log rocking chairs. That's a fear of mine to this day. I don't own one. I was thrown into one of them and it broke. And you all know how big those rocking chairs are.
Yeah.
So it was a continuous fear. I had the people, I had the backing. But my mind told me if I leave, I'm going to die.
Man.
If this is as bad as it gets, I'll be okay.
So, Deb, in your situation, which in the end we'll tell a story, it's funny, but was it like you said, I know what your reasoning was. I know why. It's, like y'all are on this trip together and you had all these health issues and you'd already made up your mind this was your dying trip and but was it that, or was it because you had experienced so much abuse early and you're like, was there any thoughts of like, I'm not doing that shit again? Like,
yeah, so
I'm not putting up with that.
When Amanda was just talking about the fear, I recognized it right away because I grew up with that. I'm going to kill your brothers if you say something. I'll kill you if, it was fear that is control, which is what abusers of all kinds want. They want full control of you. So I already experienced that growing up. It was always a constant state of fear. So when and I had to forgive myself for this one. It began with him getting very drunk and him forcing himself on me. But of course, I was like, well, I'm married to him. So I brushed it off like it was nothing, even though he held me down forcefully. Yeah. And then it turned into, well, it began with these tiny little, I was telling you, Amanda, these tiny little insults to make you feel less than, to start breaking your self-esteem down. Yeah. And then you kind of just, oh, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. But it builds up. So then he did that, the forcing himself on me. And then the last straw for me was we got in an argument. He grabbed my wrist and he twisted it and it felt like he was about to break it. And I threatened him. I said, I'm not having that. So I filed for divorce the very next morning. And then me still not being okay, finding out I was dying, even though I had divorced this man, I didn't want to die alone. So I took him with me.
Right.
Knowing who he was. But I didn't want to die alone. So that was my rationale. It's better to have somebody. But then he showed his true colors again on the road. And I told him, we had made it from South Carolina to Texas. And I said, I'll turn this rig right around and take you back home right now. But this isn't going to happen. This is about me. I'm dying. So this is my trip. Yeah. And he's like, just drop me off at the nearest Salvation Army. And I said, okay, find one. So he looked it up and I dropped him off and I drove away. I was like, bye.
It's like,
yeah.
Those are fun. That's like, I wish there was videos of those oh shit moments of those kind of guys like going, oh shit.
He meant it.
Yeah. I did not think this through.
I think he really knew I was serious because I was supposed to be dying. I literally had nothing to lose. So if he pushed me, I had nothing to lose. So his out was to be dropped off.
If I'm gonna die, if I'm gonna die anyway, you're gonna go.
Yep.
It's you first.
You know,
Yep.
we as individuals in abusive situations are very vulnerable.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's always, you know, like in my situation of it won't happen again. I look back now and you're stupid enough to believe that it's not going to happen again.
You're not
Right.
stupid. Remember that.
And no, you're not. But
It's
in
conditioning.
those times,
Right.
you in your brain are thinking it's never going to happen again. And in my profession, I've had to say those words a lot of times because sometimes when you say it to a more normal level, you
Mm-hmm.
know, we look back and we think, how stupid were we? You know, because now I know what I know. I could have gotten out a long time and, you know, time before that. And people say, well, why didn't you? You know, there are a lot of people in the world who do not understand why we as men, women, whoever, but in my situation as a woman, that I would not accept the help to get out.
Yeah.
It's conditioning.
And now, you know, working with what, you know, with some of the people I do and the things that I do, they're like, oh, you know, how did you do it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's, to me, that's the important thing here, right? For me, the message I want to get at is that, like, you know, Deb, she's kind of already told her reasoning, and it was matter of fact, and that's that. But there are
I won't be
cases
hurt again.
where you go 5 years.
Yeah.
Right.
There are cases that it goes on for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Well, I think I
And
had so
in
much
those situations,
abuse before. You know, I think I had all
Right.
those years before, which is why I was done.
I had abuse before as well, but it was more of a lot of the mental abuse. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I had abuse growing up from my biological father. You know, all of those things. But you know, when my dad to this day, when he came in my life, I thought, okay, my dad's, you know, he taught me what a man was supposed to be, and I thought I found somebody who was very similar to the way my dad was to me, my, you know, just the way my dad was.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I tried everything in my power. You know, it even goes through the mindset of a lot of people of what did I do so wrong today? One wrong word, one thing you say that could throw somebody over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And for me in general, it took a lot. It took, you know, I felt worthless. I felt like I didn't deserve any better, you know, any better. So we go through a lot of mental mind changes on a daily basis when you're facing abuse in any form, you know, whether it be, you know, once or twice, or whether it be 100 times, or,
I
you
will
know,
say, I will say this when you just said that. I feel as though you are in survival mode during that time, so it does not allow you to think about what you're worth.
no,
To
you
fight for
think of
yourself.
what you have to do to protect you in that present moment.
That's it. It's survival mode. So it doesn't allow
And,
you to
you
work
know,
on you.
no, you, in my situation, and I know a lot of other people feel this way, you become very low, that you aren't worth anything. You
Mhm.
are not, you know, your self-worth is just diminished.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, you
Right.
look in the mirror, all you see is black and blue. And, you know, if I didn't have makeup on today, I have a gigantic scar that covers my whole cheek right here. You know, I have a big scar across my forehead. This one bothers me a lot more than, you know, some of the other ones, but this one bothers me a lot because I look in the mirror every day to this day and see it.
Yeah, it's a constant reminder.
Yes. And when I do look in the mirror and see it, you know, there's mornings I'm thinking, you know what? That tells a story.
Yeah.
but at the same time, here's the makeup. It's like, okay, time to go. You know, because, you know, I get asked a lot of questions on the fact of, is it hard to tell your story today? I get this often. No, it's not hard to tell my story, but when you're out and somebody will say, oh, what happened to you? You know, or, you know, and it's like, okay, today is not the day, because we try so hard to move forward. But in those times of abuse, your self-worth, your everything is not there. You have to, you know, and with me, it was during certain hours of the day, I knew I would be home by myself. He worked swing shifts, so was it going to be the morning that day? Was it going to be the night that day? Or was it going to be a whole week that he was at home? So there, as it got closer to the end, I started to prepare myself that these are the times I have when I know he's not going to be here. What can I do? So as time went, then the back of my head happened. And that was the last thing I remember, was walking from our building to our house, walking past a concrete fire pit. And that was all I remembered. You know, I don't know. You know, I've even thought back, what did I say? What did I do?
Right. What did I do? Yeah.
And
to me, it's like it's almost like, you know, it's almost like these dudes are CIA operatives. They're really good at that, like mind games.
They want you to believe that you did something wrong.
Yeah.
And the moment you realize that you didn't is the moment you're going to gain the strength to leave. And the hardest part with that is, you know, the mind games, the roller coaster effect. And that's what I call it. Here's today, you know, you get the crap beat out of you. So we're going to go up here. You know, then it comes back down. You know, things are great until it goes back. So I use the term the roller coaster effect.
Right.
And, you know, today he loves me. Tonight I'm going to get the shit beat out of me.
Right.
So it takes a person to finally have, when it comes to life or death, let me just say it that way. I got up that morning and was feeling it. I'm like, something's not right, because I just felt stuff running down the back of my neck.
Right.
And literally, as gross as this sounds, as I was feeling the back of my head, my finger was submerging in my head.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what was there.
Yeah.
So once I knew, once I made the phone call to ask, and that phone call was, you actually woke up.
That blew my mind. Yeah, that you had to call him.
Yeah. That, you know, what happened to me? And, you know, at first it was told, you know, it was a 4-wheeler accident. It was this, I never got on a 4-wheeler. You know, it was, oh, we went to see your mom and dad.
And again, here we are. We just talked about this guy right before this came on, and you're still here. You are now. This dude is still walking free and clear.
In the end, he got 2 years diversion. And it's who you know and what you can get.
Wow.
So, you know, it was a week before I was able to go to the hospital. You know, finally I drove myself to the hospital, was taken to the trauma center from one hospital to the next. Right then I knew, and this is a really weird situation to say, but my very best friend at the time is actually my husband's brother. I knew his brother before I knew him.
Yeah.
And my mom couldn't come get me at the time. So when I actually was getting out of the hospital, I called, you know, now to this day, my brother-in-law, but at the time, my best friend.
Yeah.
And it was at that very moment when he took me to my mom that I had to figure out a game plan. I had to figure out what I was going to do.
Yeah.
But I went back.
Yeah.
I had to go back to figure out how to get out because I was told, you better come back. You know, so, but at that time it was like, okay, I'm going to go back, but I know I'm getting out. So I went back, and it wasn't but a couple days. He was on swing shift, and I called his dad at 3:00 in the morning, and I said, I'm ready to go home.
Yeah.
I said, come get me and take me to my mom and dad. And, you know, everything I had, we loaded everything up that night, you know, and here's the funny part is he was texting, he was calling, you know, all of these things. And I was answering him just like I normally would. Until I got to my mom and dad's, and my dad had actually taken my phone. And he said, no more. No more. He said it'll be a cold day in hell before anything happens to you. And, after so long, it took, and this is a whole nother one, but it takes a lot of courage even after you leave.
Right.
Because there were thought processes of, I have to go back. He's going to find me. He's going to kill me. I have to go back.
Right.
But in getting out, someone has to know the right time. And it's never the right time. The right time is get the hell out and be done the first time.
Right.
So, that leads into so much. But in my situation, it took me a very, very long time to build that strength to say, I have 3 kids at home. I have 3 kids that need a mom.
Right.
So I had a lot in the end that helped me make that decision because I thought I was dead.
Well, all right, Deb. So how long was you were married to this guy? How long were you married to him when yours started? Like when how long?
I was married to him for 4.5 years. And this was...
Did it start right away?
No, it started with the little comments, little tiny comments. Like I was explaining to her, like I was in the mirror one day and I said,
wasn't like a man, like 0 to 90 for a man.
Right. But I also am
gradual.
I'm also very, I stand my ground a lot. So when he would try to say something, I'm not having it. And he knew that. And I was his free ride,
right.
So, cause he had nothing. So he knew, he moved into this 4-bedroom house on 6.5 acres. I had a pool. I had everything. So he knew I was his money bank, So the moment I would stand up for myself, he'd back right off,
Right.
So
Do you feel, Deb, that there was a lot, maybe mental on your end? Like, no, do you feel like that there maybe was a lot of mental abuse from him on your end before, throughout those 4.5 years?
So I think, they were all little digs at my self-esteem. So he knew that I had lost my husband, the love of my life, after 20 years, and he knew the whole story. And we married 2 years after, when I was in full panic mode. I don't know how to be by myself, all that. And so, it was a lot of, I'll do anything for you and, all that stuff. And then it would be little digs at my self-esteem. Like, for instance, when I was in the mirror and I was like having a good hair day and I said, wow, finally my hair looks good. That's literally all I said. And he goes, conceited, aren't you? And I was like, that's weird. I snapped back at him, but he would do it again and again and in public. And I did.
That's a low self-esteem. Yeah, that's what that is.
Right.
That's a low
Right.
self-esteem guy. He knew he had nothing. He was nothing,
Yep.
and he did not. He just couldn't take it that you didn't need him.
Right.
Um, and so he had to, that's a low self-esteem. What I would call like my dad would say, just a weak, soft ass man. That's what
Yeah.
that
And
is.
and truth be known, most of men who are abusers, men, women are kind of fall under a different category, but most men who are abusers do have low self-esteem.
Yeah.
Right.
They are in a position that they want to make themselves look better than you.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
want
And it
control
can be
because they don't have
anything.
any.
Yes, it's a control
And
issue.
so
Mhm.
we talked about this before. They always say, "Oh, we had this discussion on the live the other night. Abusers always abuse." Okay, well, his dad seemed like a decent guy. He wasn't abused growing up. I don't. Was he? I mean,
No,
was he?
no, he wasn't.
His dad seemed like a decent man. So Where did this guy learn it? Where did he?
So I'm not real sure exactly how it started, but he had been married. I mean, he had two girls, so he had been married previous. He did the same thing to her, and her dad was a police officer.
Ooh, man.
So he had done the same thing to her. Was it as severe? No. But I had later found out that it had happened to her to a degree. When you do on the percent scale of my 10 million% of what I went through, hers was very low. So I'm not real sure. I mean, I know his parents divorced, when he was younger. Um, so there was a lot of things that were a struggle as he was growing up, but abuse was not one of them.
I would look more at his
His
mother.
dad, his dad has always told him you'll never put your hands on a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And truth be known, there were many times at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning I'd call his dad, and his dad would show up at the house, and I knew for that very minute of my life that I was going to be okay for that time, because I mean, his dad would ask him, "Did you put your hands on her?"
Yeah.
And he would tell his dad. So, I thought, for the longest time that was going to be my help. And in the end it was. But it a lot of times when a person goes through abuse as a child, and I have, seen this, they're either they're going to be one of those as they get older, or with the right kind of treatment and the right kind of help through life, they are going to be complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So statistics do show that a person who, has been abused throughout their lives are not going to turn out to be that same way, because they're going to learn that they don't want anybody to go through exactly what they've gone through.
Yeah. I feel like
It's different when it comes to sexual abusers and things like that. That is a whole different scenario.
Yeah.
But as far as your physical, mental abuse type things, or it boils down to a control issue. And when you take away that person's control, or you remotely disturb their control,
Mhm.
they're going to do whatever it takes to keep that control. So control issued people have a higher tendency to abuse someone as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about yours? Do you know, how did he grow up?
That's why I said I look at the mother. So when he grew up, his dad is a very gentle man, very sweet, kind. The mother was not. She was very mean to him. And I feel as though with men, when they feel out of control when they're growing up, and their mothers are the cause of that, because
Yeah.
they feel like they don't have any kind of validation, any kind of they try and develop their own control when they get older. And
Yeah.
they typically will take it out on the weaker sex because they can have the physical control, sometimes the mental control. And I feel as though with him, he tried, because I was at my weakest after my husband had passed. I wasn't myself. So he tried to dig at my self-esteem. And but when it became physical, I wasn't going to have it because I grew up with that.
Yeah.
And the moment he grabbed my wrist, I knew either he's going to be out of my life or he's going to be out of life. I wasn't going to
Right.
deal with it. I won't
Yeah.
deal with it.
It's funny. My dad, I always talk about my dad, what just a good man he was. And his parents both, his my grandmother was a mean lady, like next level mean. And, I mean, with, his brother, when I was a kid, he had one brother. And I remember the night I was little. I just remember my dad answering the phone call in the middle of the night and breaking down. His brother had changing a tire or something had been hit by a car and got killed. And so, and he was the younger or brother, I think. And, but my grandmother would say some things to him like, I wish it would have been you instead of Bobby.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. I'm just mean
Yeah.
and hated my mom and treated my mom like complete shit too her whole life. And my granddad was not the nicest person to him. I mean, and and so I always was dumbfounded like how my dad turned out. Like how did you not and like you said, I think it was Amanda who talked about that. Like he just made up his mind, I'm not gonna be that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm not gonna be.
I
And
knew right away I was not going to tolerate anybody beating on me because I had already gone through
right.
it my whole life. There is no way.
Yeah, it's like no, yeah, I'd rather go down swinging.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times that what he was talking about was his grandparents. A lot of times in the way that we look back now because of so many law changes over time, the way that we were raised growing up, we didn't quite think was abuse, or the way that the older generations raised their kids, wasn't necessarily looked at upon or as abuse.
Yeah.
So it was looked very differently.
Yeah.
And in most generations like my dad or your dad or it's like that you didn't hear or see of it from people of
Right.
those generations,
Right.
because it just wasn't thought of. I guess you could say they were raised to be very respectful
Right.
men. My biological father, that was a whole different scenario,
Yeah.
because he was abusive to my mother.
Mm.
But it when it comes to domestic violence of any sort, there again, it's those roller coasters.
Right.
You could walk into somebody's life that you think is the best person on the face of the earth. This person is gonna give you and treat you so well, and the flip of a switch.
Yeah.
And it's learning those warning signs.
Yeah. So, all right. So we've covered quite a bit, but and like I said, it's the two stories are interesting, different, and how they were handled. So like you said earlier, domestic violence 101, right? This is kind of the beginning. We talked about, the mindset of the abuser and what you experienced and what your thought processes were. So since this is the courage, like we're talking about having the courage to get out, um, what, well, we'll go both. So Amanda, you said it earlier, right? And I think that's the most important thing, was the most important lesson for me in this was one time. You get one chance. That's it. Not second, not third, not fourth. If you'll do it once, you know you'll do it again.
Mhm.
And
And
so as a
that's
person who's in it, right, you knew that.
Mhm.
You had an idea, right? You probably had an idea like that's what was coming, and
Oh, yeah.
it came real fast.
And it was
So
the second time that it happened was I was like, I would, it just automatically, it's like, okay, this happened once, I'm sorry, blah blah, you hear all the sob story,
yeah.
and then it happens again.
And man, and how many times, I mean, that very scenario is almost every freaking domestic violence case you hear. That's the same shit. It's the same process, right? I'll
Right.
never do it again. I'm sorry. And it continues. And so in that sense, for me, for women and men listening out there that are going through it, to me, it's like that is, domestic violence 101 lesson, courage to get out. The main lesson is one time.
Yes,
That
and that's where on our paper I have the big, and I've always loved this, learning the I'm sorry, or it says learning the I'm sorries don't stop the abuse after the first I'm sorry didn't work.
right.
Yeah.
So
So
there you go.
the first I'm sorry, most people in anything, most people, first time it happens, big or small, most people are thinking that I'm sorry. They admitted their fault. They did this, they did that. But that first I'm sorry, that I'm sorry became the second, the second episode or the second abuse. And then it continues and continues. I look back today and tell myself I should have left after the first I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And
So
So
it's learning that when the first I'm sorry doesn't work, it's time to go.
yeah. So Deb, I'd say for me, the lesson I learned from you, because your case was different, right? It wasn't instant physical, violent
Sure.
abuse
Right.
how you started. So I'd say for me, second lesson I learned from you is you start hearing those digs, those little comments and, cuts, and they're consistent and they don't stop. And,
Mhm.
and they're, and constant, they're always coming.
Yeah.
Then the lesson for me is you can either continue down that path, or you can just nip it in the bud right then and just say, hey, this is
Yeah.
what's happening. I see it happening. Not stupid. And if you don't quit, then one chance. That's it.
Right. So
That's it.
I feel like for me, because of what I went through as a child, I used to hear, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit you so hard, from my parents,
Right.
Oh, you made me
Right.
do it.
Right.
You should have done this. All those things. I heard all that for years. So the
Right.
moment I started noticing any kind of harm, whether it's mental or physical,
Yeah.
that you want to inflict on someone else, that means they don't love you. You don't do that to someone you love. Whether you say, oh, I
Right.
didn't mean it, I'm sorry, I love you, and start being nice to someone, that's not love. And I was lucky enough to
Yeah.
have Ron to show me what love was, because
Right.
Yeah.
it's the complete opposite. If anyone is capable of putting physical harm on you or demean you and make you feel less than, there is no real love there. That is not
Right.
love. That is
No.
control, and I'm the boss. You're going to do what I say or else. That's what that is. That is not love.
Yeah. So yeah, to me, that's a great way to end this first episode, is learning those two lessons. And that's an important one, right? I mean, and that can be in any situation. It doesn't have to be in domestic violence, or,
Right.
and for me, I, and Adam will tell you this, and I've always been this way, and it's a energy thing, I guess, but most of the time I can walk into a room of people and I can real fast sense, I don't like you. I ain't gonna
Yep.
be around you. I don't like you. I'm not gonna be around you. I don't like you. I
Yep.
like you. All right, we can talk. And that's the way I roll. And so, you know, this
It's a
whole thing
vibration.
still just right. It boggles my mind. But
And you're gonna learn that a lot more as we even go through the domestic violence part, because you can specifically tell
yeah,
when you see a couple out, you can specifically see signs of those kind of people.
I do
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I see people sometimes, and then you can tell. It's like you can see. We'll go out to eat sometimes, and you have a couple that are out to eat, and I'm like, I know how Anna and I are together, and we act towards each other or whatever. And I'll see a couple. I'm like, that lady ain't happy. That
Right.
lady, she not even. She won't even look at him. She won't say, he's talking, and she won't even look at him. She's just looking ahead and nodding her head, like
Mm-hmm.
she don't want to be there. And yeah, it's a yeah. You see it all the time, and
Yep.
now for me, I hate it because I'm gonna be that guy that wants to go over and go, hey, dude, you put your hands on this lady. You wanna step outside for a second, have
Right.
a chat for a minute?
There is one small little thing that I do want to add before we get off, and I'll do it really quick. Since we are doing this on on the getting out of domestic violence or relationships in the United States, there are many, 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 many resources. So if
Mm-hmm.
somebody is watching and somebody is battling domestic violence, reach out to your local law enforcement. They can lead you in the direction of help. So
Yeah,
there are so many protective things, protective, facilities, protective, that it
Yep.
doesn't necessarily mean that you have to know when the time is right.
yeah,
One time should be the last time,
right.
because reaching out for that help, there are so many organizations that do help people in domestic violence situations to this, that it's not, I don't have the money to leave, or,
Right.
I've got to make sure everything is right.
Yep.
There's
Yeah.
all those kinds of help
So
waiting for you on the other side.
I think so we're gonna, I want to save this for the second episode, but we talked about this. Both we all three have talked about this in a certain situation where there is that situation where you, is this truly what it's being portrayed to be?
Right.
And and so that mindset boggles my mind too. It's like,
And I think that's going to be a great topic of discussion.
yeah. So, because it is. I mean, it wasn't until you really pointed it out that I thought, man, it never even really crossed my mind. And so, yeah, I think that's going to be for me, I want that to be the second episode, because I've been thinking about that a lot like since we had that discussion. So
It almost reminds me of a situation or a children's book, and I preached this in my house to my kids, The Boy Who Cried Wolf.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and man, that it's not just it's domestic. That happens.
It happens all the time.
And and man, that's a dangerous thing too. That can ruin somebody's life just as easily as the other.
Mm-hmm.
And
That is a control issue on the opposite side.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I thought that was awesome, and I appreciate you talking about that, the resources part. There's a lady that's going to come on. Y'all haven't gotten to meet her. We talked about her, Leanne.
We can't wait.
She has a nonprofit in Midland, Texas called We Create Warriors, and she went through the same experiences Amanda. Tough lady, but she got hurt, numerous times, and her way of fighting back is creating this this nonprofit where they, have scholarships for girls and all kinds of things for them to do. So I appreciate you saying that. That completely.
It is because, I know that there's going to be somebody that's watching this saying, okay, I'm
Where
watching
would I
this.
go? What would I do?
Where would I go? What do I do? All those things. Or, wait, there is life on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As the young, is there life out there? And that's something that drove me so far, that there is so much life out there. You just have to take the leap of faith. And sometimes we feel that it's a leap of faith.
Right. And if not, we always got Deb, who lives off grid. She can be like Denzel Washington type stuff. She can just show up and then disappear. Show up and handle business. Disappear.
That's right.
Got access
I'm not sure what.
Got access to national parks all over the country.
Right? Be like,
It's a great
Deb. I like it too. In the Life Warrior, Life Warrior United, we have such a wide variety of people here, that are now all coming together to, I get a message from somebody, I can't, you need resources here. So even in domestic violence, we're picking up so many areas that are going to be able to help these men and women in these situations.
That's cool. That's going to be a cool thing. And I think it's going to grow once the word even gets out more. I think it's going to grow even more, and it's going to grow into something. And I'm like, gosh, I got to wrap my head around it. How do we do this the best way? And it's like, man, I want to start getting these things on my website, like whatever. It's like I was telling somebody the other day, there was a business that, I was talking to them about, working together, and I'll support you. You put my stuff on your website, I'll put yours on mine. And they didn't want to do it. They were like, well, the advice I got was, you need to worry about your own self and this and that. And I'm like, well, but I thought your business was about helping as many people as we can. It's not about making money. It's not about that. I'm not trying to make money off of you. I'm trying to have a resource somewhere else where I can go, hey, I can't help you, but I bet this person can.
Right. It ain't about you making money in general. It's, that's what they don't understand. It's about you, being able to get these people to where they need to be, where that help is, where that communication is. And, that's like my website. We've had a delay on a lot of things in our lives here, but, we're getting ready to start working on getting my website back up and going. And I'll be the first to say Life Warriors going on my website.
Well,
that's part of, but no, that's just part of it, because I now direct clients to watch the lives, because I'm like, watch this. You're going to realize it isn't just you.
Right.
Yeah.
When they're on there, I can't call them out, or I can't, but I can direct them in that path of, hey, watch this, because you're going to realize there are more people in this world going through that exact same thing And don't be surprised if you see one of those just by getting on that live.
Right. Yeah. Deb, I don't know what we're gonna do with you. We got to come up with something to know something, some kind of handle for you
Yeah.
to have since you're traveling. I don't
I'm
know
the nomad.
what we got to.
We'll just, she's fine. She can be right there with us. We got her. She's the traveling.
Right.
Whatever
Yeah.
we call her, the traveling.
Hey, what state are you in right now?
I'm in Arkansas,
you know,
and then I'm gonna head to Texas.
right.
So
So it's like you're in Arkansas. Hey, we got somebody in Arkansas. We can't get to them.
I'm the nomad.
And it's just honestly,
Right. Yeah.
it's just honestly having somebody in that area that can even, a lot of times even get on this thing called a phone,
right,
and look up resources.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when we look up resources, we're going to be directed to the state we live in.
Right.
Because it picks up our locations.
Right. Got you now.
Yeah.
Well, y'all, that was awesome. I think that was a good first episode of this whole thing, and learned some lessons. I did, and I had some takeaways, which is exactly what I wanted, because I want to learn more about this, so
Yeah.
I can help. I can actually, give some advice to people now. I feel like I've some things I can tell people if they come to me.
Right.
Here's two things I learned, real,
Yeah, I'd like to do one on finding your strength.
Yeah.
To be able to
Yeah. Man, that's a big thing with me. Just
there is one, learning your self values, finding your strength.
Yep.
I mean, there's
there's
so much.
Doing life warrior shit, real life warrior shit, and
exactly. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that in a minute. I can't say that on here right now, but there's a funny thing behind that. There needs to be a life warrior shirt that says that.
I agree. We've already discussed that, and the guy that does my stuff, I've had a couple of those. I'm like, here's a couple of things my dad told me that I think the shirts would go great, and he's like, I agree, but we're trying to get the life warrior brand and message out there, like, he's like, we can't have a shirt that says don't be a and and I was like, I get it. He said, we can do that later when you're big and grown and people will love it, and
but that one is crucial to life warrior. It's crucial.
I agree. There's so many, like I said, my dad was so awesome in the things that the little things that he taught me, and the things that he used to say. I'm like, I never would have guessed that they would have come up at this point with doing this. And but yeah, true life warrior, and that's what it was. So, well, y'all, I appreciate y'all coming on. I thought it was awesome. And yeah, wrapped episode number 1, domestic violence 101.
Yeah. The next one, I think, Mark, you said we were going to do basically The Boy Who Cried Wolf. And that's the only way I know to word that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what, when we start promoting it, that's what I'll call it. And,
the boy, girl, the person, wolf.
Yeah.
And then from there, like we were talking, we can go on into the aspects of basically learning your self-confidence to build yourself back up to become more.
These are lessons I don't like. Like I said, I was never physically or sexually abused. I was never mentally abused as a kid. Now, I got my ass whipped on numerous occasions for doing dumb shit, as my dad would call it, and rightfully so. But I, it was never, and so these are all lessons I want to learn. I want to hear. So I think it's going to be awesome. So appreciate y'all coming on. Appreciate everybody watching.
Thank you.
Like and subscribe, pass it on to all your friends.
I'm going to see if it'll do it.
Yeah. Anybody who's experiencing Yeah, that's it. It'll do it. There it goes.
It did.
Mine doesn't do it.
Anybody who's
It's okay, Deb. I'll do it for you.
yeah, there you go.
That one's
Anybody
for
who's
Deb.
experiencing domestic violence in any way, shape, or form, reach out to me, reach out to Amanda, reach out to Deb. Go watch their podcast so you can know a little bit more about their story. And if you do that, you'll have a little bit better understanding of why they think the way they think.
And the good thing is that if you reach out to one of us, normally one of us is going to talk to the other one and the other one. So we work as a team
Network.
to do, to help.
Yep. So yeah, it's awesome, y'all. So yeah, y'all reach out if you need it. And remember, like I always say, wake up tomorrow and go do life warrior shit.
Yep.
All right, y'all. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.